What's good, boys? Today I'ma drop what if Deku was the spot. And listen, this video is gonna go crazy, so unfortunately it's gonna have to be a one shot, but trust me, it's fire. That said though, leave a like and all that extra stuff, and with nothing else to say, let's get started.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Alright, so this story all starts off immediately in an action-packed way. Bakugo would be chasing Deku because he's trying to bully him, but not only because of that, but this would be the same day that Deku would have ended up having his notebook blown up and thrown into the pond, right? After that happens, Deku looks at Bakugo, and this time, instead of saying silent and not doing anything about it, he looks at Bakugo with that look, and Bakugo blasts an explosion in his hand, right? He's like, "You gonna do something, nerd?" And Deku looks at him, and he looks down at the ground and thinks to himself that if he never stands up to Bakugo, he'll never stop. So Deku thinks, I'll do something today and maybe he'll finally respect me. So he rushes at him and he punches Bakugo in the face. And after Bakugo gets punched, both of his goons look at Deku and they laugh. They're like, "Oh, you messed up." But Bakugo straight just stands there stunned. And Deku immediately grabs his bag and runs out of the classroom as fast as possible. Bakugo turns to his goons and asks, "Did he just..." And they look at him and they say, "Yeah, he did, Bakugo." From here, Bakugo gets into a rageful moment and he proceeds to chase Deku around, going down the stairs as fast as he can, chasing Deku for 6 straight blocks. Eventually, Deku gets to this weird looking factory that is still open, mind you, trying to run for help and get an adult or something since all the ones in the street weren't helping him. And since Deku knows there's a security guard there, Deku figured somebody was going to be willing to help him. So Deku continuing the run, Bakugo would be yelling at him from behind, "You're dead when I catch you, Deku." But Deku would continue running, not caring about anything at all other than not getting hurt. And as soon as he runs into the doors to try to get help from the security guard, boom, massive explosion. It's almost like a mini black hole went off inside of there and it sucked everybody in, even Izuku, and then it shot everything out. Bodies would have literally went flying everywhere, so much destruction and chaos would happen, and Bakugo would be watching as all of this went down. Bakugo from here, realizing that Izuku was in there, would have a stereotypical anime moment where he's like, what? You know what I mean? And then after that happens, we pretty much just get a scene of Bakugo and his goonies running away as fast as possible. Deku from here would end up waking up, and what he finds is nothing. Debris, dead bodies, and nothing. Just a straight up white void. Could you imagine how crazy you would go with nothing but a white void, debris, and dead bodies? No food, no water, nobody to interact with. Just white and debris. That's literally it. And Deku would be stuck there for months. Don't think that this is something that just happens out of nowhere. We're talking about the 10-month training. Deku is quite literally stuck in that dimension for 8 months. That's not a that's not something casual. That's not simple. Deku is having the worst time of his life, and when I tell you guys he's having a terrible time, he is having a bad time. Deku is quite literally going insane. Oh, and by the way, before you guys continue on with the story, just know this is a one shot. Actually, I'm probably gonna put that on the title, but anyways, yeah. So Deku is pretty much just feeling the effects of everything that's going on right now, and he's like, what do I do? Like, how do I even get out of here? He through towards the 6th month, he would have gave up, but eventually towards the 8th month, the beginning of it, he would have started to gain a little bit of hope, realizing that he can potentially do something to get out of here. He finally would have decided, you know, let me try to get myself out of here. So after a bunch of months of trial and error, Deku would finally be able to free himself from that dimension using his warping abilities, or his spots, right? His spots, which can teleport him to different things, his portals. And Deku would create one large enough for himself to go inside of and finally make himself appear in the outside world. He would appear amidst the destruction in the facility that would have gone down, and a construction worker would be like, "Hey, What are you doing here? Deku immediately falls down onto the ground scared, and seeing as this is his first human interaction in so long, Deku would actually smile. But when he realizes that it's a hostile interaction, Deku runs away immediately. He makes his way towards the city, and he begins running straight home, wanting to see his mom after having had passed such a long time. When Deku gets home, he would finally look at himself in the reflection of the glass, and when he sees what he looks like he actually gets to see his face, Deku feels heartbroken. Deku lost himself. Yeah, there's mutation quirks and stuff like that, but Deku just hopes that she'll be able to take it easy. I mean, at least now he has powers, right? Maybe he can become a hero if it hasn't been too long. Deku lost track of time at around 6 to 7 months, right? But continuing forward with what I was basically going to say is that, well, pretty much what have ended up going down is Deku knocks on the door, Inko answers, and she's like, "What are you doing here? Like, villain." She'd be like, "Hisashi, there's a villain attack." And not only is that the case, but in the last 6 months, Inko got pregnant again, so she has like a little bit of a belly, and Deku realizing that would be like, "What? Like, Mom, you're pregnant?" But Inko just looks at him and says, "What are you talking about? My son is dead." And Izuku realizes like it's really been such a long time, you know what I mean? And he'd be like, "Mom, it's me. Like, I survived. Like, I've been stuck in another like dimension or something like that." And Hisashi comes out and he's like, "Stop lying. We had to bury Izuku without his body in there. We know he died." And they're like, "Nobody could have survived. We saw the camera footage." And Deku's like begging and pleading for them to listen to him, but they don't care. Hisashi literally punches Deku in the face and sends him back, and Deku would just stay outside on their porch. Eventually, police would end up arriving, and Deku would be forced to run away, using one of his little portals to end up wherever it is that he ends up. And Deku would end up making his way towards a rundown little abandoned shack. Deku there would end up pretty much going over towards like the water thing, turning it on, and realizing that nothing comes out. And Deku would be like, "I don't know if I need water. I don't feel thirsty." And he would just like look around and begin doing a little bit of research on that day. Deku would steal a laptop from somebody, and would ultimately, after doing that, would end up pretty much making his way back towards his little shack thing, where he begins doing a bit of research on all the events that have just taken place after such a long time, right? And what Izuku would pretty much end up finding out after all of this is that the explosion would have happened and many people were reported dead that day, Izuku being one of them, and Katsuki Bakugo wasn't even on the file. It wasn't even shown that that was the reason Deku was there. If it wasn't for Bakugo being there, bullying him or making him feel like lesser than him, none of this would have happened, Deku would think. But that's a good thing, because at least now Deku has powers and he can become a hero, right? That's what he would think to himself. He inevitably would make his way towards the police station, and once Izuku would end up arriving, he would begin to try to ask for help, being like, "Hey, like, my name is Izuku Midoriya." But midway through, Deku would put his hand on the counter, and then his hand would end up popping out in front of a police officer and punching him in the face. The police officer would be like, the police officer immediately like gets back up quickly and would take out his gun, and he would begin shooting at Deku. And Deku would just hold his hand out, and the bullets would shoot through and then shoot out somewhere else. And Deku would realize like, "No, like, I'm not trying to hurt you guys." You know, he's basically pleading for them to leave him alone. Like, he promises he's not trying to cause any damage or be like a threat or anything. And they don't calm down. Like, they basically, if anything, they get more worried. Eventually, heroes would end up arriving, and Deku would end up having to flee the location, eventually realizing that there's no way he can go back to the police station. So Izuku thinks to himself he has to make a living some other way because he's tired of living in the shack. So Izuku thinks to himself, "Well, looks like I'm gonna have to rob some sort of bank or something." So Izuku would immediately make his way towards a bank in the area where Endeavor actually is the #1 hero who patrols the area. And once Deku would end up arriving, just like in the movie Across the Spider-Verse, Deku... Oh, and by the way, if you guys haven't seen the new Across the Spider-Verse movie, I recommend watching it. And I'm about to give you guys the scoop right now. Like, I'm about to give you guys a nice little website where you guys could watch it for yourselves and not really have to go to the theaters or anything like that. If you want to rewatch it or something like that, but look up freemoviesfull.net, and I promise you, you're gonna get it in pretty decent quality. It's not like amazing like it is in the movies, but it's high quality, like it's 180p. Anyways, though, continuing forward with the story, what would pretty much end up going down is that Izuku would realize that he can't, you know what I mean? Like, he can't make a living somehow. So he has to rob the bank. He goes to the bank. He tries to rob it. And midway through trying to rob this place, Endeavor would end up getting wind of this. Seeing as we've seen Endeavor acts very, very quickly in the face of danger, Endeavor would be one of the first people on the scene. Then he would immediately throw a flaming, like, he would just throw a flaming, like, arrow at Deku. And Deku would look at it, open a portal in front of himself, and the flame would shoot right back out at Endeavor, smacking him, sending him flying back. And Deku would be like, hey, like don't take me easy. And Endeavor would Endeavor would get back up and throw flames at Deku, causing Deku to jump back. And then Endeavor rushing in would throw punches and kicks and would shoot flame attacks and stuff. And Deku would try his best to dodge, but since he can't control his powers quite yet, he's basically just doing the best that he can with what he has available to himself, and he's not really doing the very best that he could. Endeavor ultimately would end up catching Deku and would say that he's just another villain of the week. And then Izuku, after hearing that, would not say, but would think, all my life people have cast me aside, acting like I was the little guy, acting like I was nothing, like I was worthless, powerless, and I'm tired of it. He looks at Endeavor and says, you know, I'm tired of being the villain of the week. Maybe I want to be the best villain there ever was. You know, Endeavor, I wanted to become a hero long ago, but it looks like hero society won't let me anymore. So if I can't become a hero, then I guess I'll just have to do the next best thing and become the #1 villain of the world. He then looks at Endeavor and he would say, and I'm going to start with him, as he would just teleport away, and Endeavor would question what just happened. But Deku would end up making his way back towards a shack, and for the following 2 months exactly, Deku would train on his brand new abilities, trying to gain better access to them and mugging people at night to get as much money as he could, eventually finally robbing a bank and being able to afford a nicer apartment place where he can finally chill somewhat whenever his powers weren't going haywire. Deku would realize to himself that the reason that he was created was because of Bakugo. So now, the one person that Izuku wants to destroy the most is Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku doesn't have access to a family anymore. He won't have access to his future dream job anymore. And worst of all, Deku won't have access to normal life. Deku's ability to eat and drink water, it's gone. No more of that ever. Deku being looked at as a normal person is gone. He can't even be looked at as a quirkless loser anymore. What is the point of life if he can't do anything? And right as Deku would think these things, he would realize that the point is to destroy Bakugo, to get him back for all those years of torment that he put him through. Bakugo wanted to hurt him long ago when Deku was powerless. And Deku wants to know how Bakugo would act in the face of death. What would Bakugo's true colors be in that moment? So, Deku would continue getting stronger and stronger every single day performing a brand new crime. And as time would pass, Deku would find that being a villain is actually quite lucrative. It's pretty fun. Throughout his journey, eventually Izuku would end up getting asked by a certain random broke worker if Izuku wouldn't mind the idea of joining a villain organization. And Deku hears him out. He would ask him what in the world he's talking about. Suddenly, the man would end up telling him that he knows about a place where villains can go and feel accepted. A place where villains can go and be a part of something bigger. And Deku, after hearing that, would end up making his way towards Shigaraki in the League of Villains hideout. Once there, he would immediately be introduced to Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and both of them would end up looking towards Izuku, asking him why in the world someone like him wants to become a villain. Dabi would even be there, and Dabi, using his multiple personality disorder, would ask Izuku what's his deal, being like, what's your deal? Why are you here? We'd love to have you here. Just all the personalities inside of him would scream, right? And Izuku would ultimately be weirded out, but when Shigaraki tells him his plans of crashing UA and doing all this crazy stuff, Deku would immediately, without thinking twice about it, would say, I'm in. And Shigaraki's like, just like that. How do we know you won't betray us? Huh? And Deku would say, trust me. There's somebody who's there that I'm pretty sure is going to get there. And I want to make sure that their life is a living hell. Whatever it is your goals are, I'll help you. As long as you help me with my goals and you take me seriously. I'm not just some villain of the week, you know. And Shigaraki looks at him and says, we'll see about that, villain. As from here, Deku would end up pretty much just chilling, getting a breakdown of the plan, and eventually, when the USJ event would happen and Kurogiri would teleport everybody away, Izuku would be one of the people there, right next to Shigaraki. When Aizawa was facing off against all the villains, Izuku would have ended up going in and using his abilities to pretty much grab onto Aizawa and, like, how do I explain what Izuku would do in lamer terms? Like, Deku proceeds to open a portal, right? On top of Aizawa, straight just on top of him, and just shoots out. He then comes in and straight BAM! Punches Aizawa square in the face, and Aizawa would be like, what? But Deku ultimately would like open another portal underneath him, drag Aizawa halfway, and then kick Aizawa in the face like he was a soccer ball, because only his top half torso would be there. And then once Aizawa finally gets kicked out of the portal and would be on the ground in pain, Aizawa using his erasure quirk would try to erase Deku's quirk, but nothing. It'd be like Deku doesn't have anything there, it's a blank. Deku would then rush in once more and would begin beating down on Aizawa, saying, "How's this for a villain of the week?" As Aizawa would end up ultimately getting defeated, and finally after all that would happen, Shigaraki would just watch as Deku just beats down on Aizawa, and after that would end up going down, we would end up pretty much just seeing one of the students end up rushing in. Katsuki Bakugo. Now Shigaraki was about to say, "Nomu, kill," but Deku would immediately say, "Stop. He's mine. That's my target. Do whatever you want with the students, but he's mine." And Bakugo would be like, "Huh? What are you talking about? What do you mean I'm yours? I'm nobody's kid. I'm gonna be the #1 hero someday, so show a little respect." Blitzing in at Deku and shooting an explosion, to which Deku would warp the explosion away and then look at Bakugo and be like, "That's it, Bakugo? Or should I say, Kachan?" And Bakugo looks at him and would be like, "Huh?" Just weirded out, because he doesn't believe it's Deku. He just thinks like, how does he know that name? Like, did he go to his middle school? Like, is he like an ex-teacher or something like that? And then he's like, "How do you know that name?" And Deku would say, "You know exactly how I know that name, Bakugo. You made me. And you know what? I'm gonna be the one responsible for destroying you." And Bakugo looks at him, throws an explosion again and again and again and again, and ultimately Deku would look at him, laugh, and would open up portal after portal after portal, teleporting in, landing sneaky blows on Bakugo. Eventually, out of nowhere, fists would come in flying out of nowhere, and Bakugo would begin getting tagged left, right, and center. Bakugo would eventually find himself down on one knee, and Deku would walk over towards him saying, "You know, it's funny. You always said that I was nothing but a quirkless idiot. But look at me now, Bakugo. Now I'm more powerful than you could have ever imagined, and there's not a thing you could do about it. Is there now, Kachan?" And Bakugo would be like, "Stop calling me that. The only person ever called me that was Deku." And Izuku would scream, "You still don't get it yet? Kachan, I am Deku. That's who I am. That's who I always have been. And now I'm gonna show you what it feels like to be powerless in the face of somebody so much stronger than you, and that instead of protecting and making you feel safe, they make you feel fear, Bakugo. That day when you changed me into what I am today, I was scared for my life. I thought you were gonna kill me. Some hero you turned out to be, right? Kachan?" As he would look at him, and Bakugo just would wide-eyed, like just look at Deku and be like, "There's no way that was Deku." And Deku would rush in, about to land a finishing blow on Bakugo, when All Might busts in through the door, makes his presence known, and sends Deku flying back with a punch. Deku from here looks towards the direction of All Might and would say, "No, no, no," slamming his fist on the ground before then looking at Shigaraki and saying, "Take care of him." Immediately the Nomu would go in and fight against All Might, and since All Might can't fight two people at the same time, he has to simply just watch, as we would have the fight between All Might and the Nomu go down, and the fight between Deku and Bakugo going down as a side piece. Deku would rush in, land blow after blow after blow, and really beat down Bakugo. He then ultimately ends up throwing him in front of a person with a flame quirk, and Deku tells him to make it toasty, as the guy shoots flames at Bakugo and he burns him. And Deku says, "How does it feel to get 4th-degree burns on your skin, Bakugo? I bet it doesn't feel too pleasant now, does it? Do I look like I'm still the weak kid you used to pick on? Because from where I'm standing, the only weak person here is you. So now, I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor, Bakugo. die, as he throws in a final blow and just bam, hits the side of Bakugo's head so hard that Bakugo proceeds to like fall down onto the ground, but Deku opens like a portal, like a spot thing on the ground, and Bakugo would fall through it, and from the top, like from the highest point in the ceiling, would fall down, crash, and splatter, straight dying. Bakugo from here looks towards the direction of what's it called? Bakugo just looks at Deku in his final breaths and would like try to mumble the word sorry, but it just doesn't come out. And Deku finally, after the Nomu would be almost about to be defeated by what's it called? By All Might, Izuku would the Nomu was almost defeated by All Might. Izuku would watch as he would say, "Get lost," and he just literally throws All Might into the void where Spot was in for months on end. Deku from here looks towards the heroes and says, "Bye-bye." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where What If Deku Was the Spot is going to be wrapping up. If this video gets like a ton of support, or this video gets like 1.5k likes, I'll drop a bonus part to this and I'll keep the story going. I'll have all the heroes trying to stop like Deku. I'll even reveal to you guys who All Might's successor was and all that stuff, and the story will get even more interesting. But that's only if you guys smash the like button. If not, we're gonna leave it here, and this is gonna be the end of What If Deku Was the Spot. So if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite part of the video was, and in the link in the description I'm gonna be leaving my TikTok page. Definitely make sure to go check that out. That said, also check out my second channel. Peace.